Hi, and welcome to Doing the Opposite, Business Disruptors, the podcast where you get to meet people who aren't afraid to swim against the tide, call out bad practice or even injustice, people who own their mistakes, thrive off of challenges, and who ultimately choose only to see the summit and not the mountain. I'm Jeff Dewing. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the author of best-selling book Doing the Opposite and a keynote and masterclass speaker. Today, you're going to meet Simon Alexander Ong. Simon is a personal development entrepreneur. He's a coach and a public speaker. His clients are from all walks of life, but they share one trait. They all believe that the greatest investment you can make is in yourself. His work has seen him invited onto Sky News, BBC Radio London and LBC Radio to be interviewed, while in 2018 Barclays UK featured him in a nationwide campaign asking him questions on how families could embrace better lifestyle habits. His insights have been featured in HuffPost, Forbes, Virgin and The Guardian. He also regularly speaks at organisations and keynotes and public events and conferences. Some of those have included the likes of Microsoft and Salesforce and even Unilever. Simon is of Chinese origin and is based in the UK with his wife Laurie and daughter Sienna. So hi Simon, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and hopefully we're going to have a lot of fun.
Jeff, likewise, very much looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So just take 2 minutes to try and give us a rounded view and a quick journey of who is Simon, where did he start, what was your journey like, and where have you ended up and why?
So Jeff, one of the things I say to my audiences and clients I work with is that when we look at society around us, many of us are exhausted, not because we are physically doing too much, but firstly, we are doing too little of the things that bring us joy. And second, because we are often running someone else's race. And that was exactly what I was doing for the first half of my life. Up until I was late teenager, I was following someone else's race. So what I mean by that is I had grown up with this mistaken belief that success was defined by a job title. No one in my immediate family had ever run a business before. And my peer group were very much focused on landing a job within the fields of finance, medicine, consulting, and accountancy. Very traditional jobs that had good reputations and paid very well. And so that very much influenced my thinking about what I wanted to do. So when I graduated from university in the middle of 2007, I pursued a career in finance at what was probably the worst possible time. It was a year before the global financial crisis. And the company I started as a graduate with was Lehman Brothers, which collapsed into administration around 14 or so months after I started.
Nothing to do with you then?
Nothing to do with me. And that kickstarted a very volatile career in that industry. I was in and out of jobs for nearly 10 years. But even though at the time, this was a very painful experience, as it is for anyone who is facing redundancy or uncertainty in their career. In hindsight, it was a beautiful blessing in disguise. And I often remark that it is in our moments of darkness, it is in our setbacks, in our challenges, in our failures that equip us with the wisdom and the insight that help us create the best moments of our life. And that led to me exploring the world beyond finance. And I dabbled in a few businesses before I landed on the fact that I really wanted to help people, because I was that person that family members and close friends would come to when they had dilemmas and choices to make and problems that they wanted someone to talk to about. And I was that person. You know, Jeff, at first when I reflect back on the journey, the first thought I had was, isn't that just being a good friend? Isn't that what being a good friend is all about? But then the second part of me thought, well, is this a skill that I could monetize? And so I went off and I pursued a couple of coaching qualifications on the side of my full-time job. And then I finished that. And it would be a couple more years after that before I fully quit my corporate work and then entered the world of entrepreneurship. And that's where the journey began to what I now get to do today. So I started coaching everyone from entrepreneurs to C-suite executives. I then got into speaking. I was invited to speak at a company, and from there, invitations started flooding in. And then the speaking, one of the things I love about speaking is you never know who's in the audience. And so from there, I was invited onto the BBC to talk about my work. And then Sky News in 2019 to do a live interview about lessons in life that could help the viewers. And then as the world was entering its first lockdown in April 2020, I not only got a book deal with Penguin, which was an incredible achievement and something I'm proud of, to get a book deal with one of the world's biggest publishing houses, but also became a father for the first time.
Wow.
And so the journey of writing a book while being a father at the same time with a newborn was one of the most challenging experiences I've ever faced. But seeing that book now in the hands of those who follow me, in the hands of people around the world who are taking photos and videos of them having read my book and their thoughts about it, has just been so surreal. And it shows me, Jeff, when you pursue the path that lights you up, that brings you joy, you begin to open opportunities that weren't there before.
For those that are listening, the book is called Energize. I highly recommend it. It's one of those things that, as Simon just said, a penguin don't suffer fools. So for Penguin to do a deal, trust me, it's a book worth reading. So that's brilliant, and thank you for that. And the newborn, and how old's the baby now?
So she's coming up to 4 years old now.
Wow.
I guess people call her COVID baby. She grew up in the COVID years, and it was around two years and 3 months before she started seeing people outside of her mum and dad not wearing a mask, which was surreal for her, because she grew up with everybody outside the household wore masks. And suddenly that dropped, and it was like, wow, these people have expressions. They have smiles and frowns and emotion. So it was surreal seeing her engaging with people for the first time without masks.
Yeah, well, I'm sure listening in your mantra, one of the things you'll be saying to anybody when you're talking about energization and creating the best of self, it's always about good quality sleep. Absolutely.
The foundation of our most productive days.
Which is a real struggle when you've got a young baby.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that you do end up sacrificing in the short term, especially in the first 2 years. The first 2 years are the toughest, but you get through those first 2 years, it gets a lot easier. But there's a great analogy with that and how we are as adults. When you look at children, if they don't get enough rest, it feels like the whole world's about to break into chaos. And I think it's the same with us as adults. If we don't get sufficient rest, then the way we respond to challenges, the way we react to other people becomes very chaotic.
It does. And I used to be one of these people that was, there's plenty of time for sleep when you're dead, because I was a mad workaholic and it was all about doing 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And it wasn't until the last 10 years when I got involved in coaching stuff that I generally realised the importance of sleep. And that's been my mantra for the last 10 years, where I get good quality sleep every night. So it has a massive impact on your daily lives, and people don't appreciate it. And it's fantastic. So anyway, listen, Simon, take me through, how did you stumble across that sort of explanation, and how do you build off of it on the importance of your specialist subject matter, which is energy?
When I looked to the people ahead of me in my journey, Jeff, and I started studying what helped them become successful in what they did, and also what has helped me in my journey to have gone from working for someone to working for myself and having built the business where it is today, I noticed that the people that performed the best were those that had the most energy. The energy, not just to get things done, but the energy to connect with people, the energy to show up, the energy to transfer inspiration from their mouths to the audience and into action that they go off and hopefully apply. And I realized that energy management, not time management, is the key to productivity. You can be time rich, but if you're energy poor, you are going to procrastinate and waste that time. However, if you flip that, if you are energy rich, even if you are time poor, you are going to get far more done in those hours and days than most will in months or years. And so I really wanted to understand, how could we take those insights and apply it in our daily lives? Because we all know about it. You just have to look at popular culture and religion and the way we bring up our children to know we all talk about energy. In Star Wars, they call it the Force. In Maori culture, they call it mana. In my Chinese culture, they call it chi. In the practice of yoga, they call it prana. So we all reference it in some way, whether it's cultural or in pop culture. So what I wanted to do is to distill what energy was in the book. And for me, energy is 4 dimensions. You've got physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. But for the vast majority of us, when we think about energy, we exclusively focus on the physical. The beginning of every year, when we think about New Year's resolutions, so many touch on the fact that I'm going to get more rest. I'm going to sign up to the gym. I'm going to eat healthier this year. All of this stuff has to do with physical energy. But if we exclude the role that mental, emotional, spiritual energy has to play, then we're not really amplifying the potential of our energy. And so I split into those 4 areas. I address them in the book. I begin with physical energy because I think it is the most important. The healthy person has lots of hopes, wishes, and dreams, but the sick have only one. And if you don't have good health, well, you can't do much else. So physical energy to me is the foundation. If you're sleeping well, you're moving your body on a regular basis, and you're feeding your body right, then guess what? You've got a baseline level of energy to then build upon to do all the other things you want to achieve in your lifetime. Mental energy is about your mindset, your ability to focus and to tap into your creativity. Emotional energy is about how you relate to yourself and how you relate to others. And then spiritual energy is about meaning and purpose. Are you doing something that makes you feel alive, or are you doing something that goes against your values and who you are?
I've got one other dimension that I'd like to add to that, which is social. So I work off of things like mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, and social. And the reason that that's important and so aligned with what you're saying is because what I've just mentioned are the 5 strands of resilience. So if you're building that energy base, you're also building incredible resilience by using the same principles. And therefore, people that are energized, people that are genuinely energized, just don't give up, which is resilience, right? They just keep going. and I think, that's why all these things are aligned. It's about how we articulate that to the various audiences. So let me ask you another question. Let me throw out a few cliches. Surround yourself with people and energy. Distance yourself from people that draw your energy. What's your view on that?
I wholeheartedly agree with that statement because energy is infectious. But the thing with energy, Jeff, is that it doesn't care if it's positive or negative. It's infectious. So if you spend a lot of time around negative energy, very quickly you're going to become a negative person. If you spend a lot of time with people with positive energy, then in no time you'll be a very positive person. So energy is infectious. It rubs off on us the more we spend with a particular type of energy. And so it's so important to regularly reflect, optimize, and curate what is in our environment. In fact, in the book, one of the things I state is that the fastest way to make meaningful progress in any area of your life is literally to design an environment around you that makes it impossible not to succeed. And that's just not the people you spend time with. That's what you read, who you follow on social media, what you listen to, the podcasts you follow, the physical space you spend time in. All of these things have a powerful and invisible influence on what you believe to be true, but also how you see yourself.
Yeah. I guess that's also aligned to the statement I use quite a lot, which is about you become your environment.
Absolutely.
If you're in a hostile environment, you become hostile. If you're in public services, and public services believe that the way to treat their peers, their colleagues, their subordinates, and their supply chain is to talk to them with hierarchy and authority, and they think that's the right way, then unfortunately the people around that feel that that's what you've got to be doing to succeed. So it is about the environment. And of course, back to what you just said, build your own environment. And that is, you have to look at creating the conditions for success around you. How do you do that? So let's carry on the energy spectrum, because there is another thing that I've learned over the years, also because of, one of your sayings, which is a lot of, makes a lot of sense. And that is, you never stop learning, right? Every day's a school day for everybody. And if you think you've learned everything, then you're going to miss out on life. But I guess the one thing that really drives me is my team have said to me over many, many years, they keep saying it on and off, I'm the CEO, right? Which everyone recognizes as the chief executive officer. And they say to me, no, you're not. You're the chief energy officer.
I like that, Jeff.
My job is just to energize these people. It's to get them punch in the air. It's to get them thinking that nothing is impossible. And I think the biggest challenge is sometimes in organizations, the C-suite, the chief exec, are hoping and assuming that's going to come from, further down the chain. They don't realize that they've got to drive that.
Absolutely.
If they don't drive that, if they don't create that environment, then everything else is like pushing water uphill.
I absolutely agree, Jeff. In my book, I reference CEO to be chief energy officer as well. Simon Sinek even puts his own spin on it, using CVO as chief visionary officer. And I think the reason this is the case is because studies have shown that the greatest influence when it comes to energy in an organization is between those at the top and the rest of the organization. So if you are in a team of 20, your energy will, of course, affect the team, but the biggest impact will come from the leader. So if a leader is somebody who is toxic, then guess what? The culture becomes toxic very quickly. If the leader is inspirational, the culture becomes very inspirational, and everybody walks into work feeling inspired. I mean, just look at Apple. When Steve Jobs did his presentations on the keynote stage, everybody became fans of the brand. They would queue up the morning a product got launched because they became part of the story. Everybody was inspired and energized from the bottom up. But when you look at a company like Uber, when the CEO was creating such a toxic environment, then guess what? It gave permission for everyone at all levels that this is the way you can behave. And so we have to be very careful if you are in that position of leadership, especially in the C-level types of roles, that you are either energizing or draining the energy of your workforce.
Of course. And I think it is about, it's the givers and the takers. It's understanding what's healthy for the business. It's also, that ability to establish that, as you quite rightly say, their toxicity is shocking. But I guess the biggest statement that I've lived by is what you ignore, you accept. So if you don't address these issues, then all you're doing is telling the world it's okay. So that's why it's really, really important that when you see challenges in your organization or even in your personal life, your family, whatever, if it's something that's bad behavior and it goes unchecked or unchallenged, then all you're saying to the world is it's okay. And it clearly isn't.
Absolutely. I mean, we communicate to others through our actions, and our actions speak a lot. I'm a parent, and I see so many similarities between parenting and leadership. Children won't necessarily listen to what you tell them to do. They will follow your actions. Your behavior speaks a lot. And it's the same in a company. If you are in a position of leadership, people don't listen as much to what you tell them to do compared to your actions. How you show up, how you behave, how you respond to people, that tells people what you really want out of them.
There's a great 4x4 matrix on communication, and it talks about the conscious communication, the unconscious communication, and you go through this process. And we spend 85% as an organisation. Any organisation spends 85% creating brochures, leaflets, memos, emails, blah blah blah, to communicate with their audience, their teams, their business, and that 85% of effort attracts 5% of attention. If you go down to the bottom quadrant, the way we behave costs us nothing in time because we just behave that way, but yet it gets 95% attention. And of course, the summary of that is no one cares what you say; they care what you do. That's what they understand.
Absolutely. And again, this goes back to energy because our actions emit energy. We're telling people through our body language, through our behavior, what we value about who we are as a person. This is why Maya Angelou said, people may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. And when you are able to elicit an emotion from someone, that is simply a transference of energy. That is why when somebody goes up on stage and they deliver an incredible keynote and you're sitting in the audience and you walk away with goosebumps and you feel energized and inspired, that's because they've just emitted that energy to you. They've empowered you to see what is possible.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic feeling for the giver and the receiver in both cases, and I think it's fantastic. So, can you think of a time or something that's really relevant to the title of this podcast where you've done something that is materially different to what people would typically do? And if so, what was it and what was the outcome?
Sure. So a couple of things come to mind. The first one, which is the most recent memory, is with regards to the book launch, Jeff. So I know lots of authors who have published books, whether it's self-published or through a traditional publisher. And typically, most were announced on social media. They'll do an event, and then people go to a bookstore or they go to the Amazon webpage to order the book. Now, what I wanted to do different is to really drive excitement, attention, and interest into the book, but not just the book, but the ideas in the book. So what I did different is a few months before the book's publication, I wanted to explore some very unique collaborations. Because what I've discovered along the way is that diversity is power. When you surround yourself with people doing different things to what you do day to day, it gives birth to originality. And so to share a few examples, one of the things that we did is we partnered with the Connaught Hotel in London's Mayfair, which at the time housed the world's best bar. And the head bartender, a guy called Ago Peroni, he mixed a cocktail called Energize. So there was a cocktail created inspired by my book Energize. And so we shot a video of this cocktail being made with someone that worked in Jamie Oliver's production team. We shared the video on social media. So he shared it on his platform. I shared it on my platform. And we came up with this idea that for 4 weeks after publication, if you went to that bar and you ordered the Energized cocktail, it would be mixed in front of you and then presented on a signed copy of my book.
Oh,
and
brilliant.
So that created an experience that people wanted to take videos of, take photos of. It was such a unique experience that, yes, it was about the book, but it wasn't the book at the forefront. The book was a supporting act to the cocktail. And then a couple of months after the book launch, we put together one of the world's first launches in the metaverse. And so it was this virtual event where you put on your Oculus headsets, or they call it Meta Quest now, and it would be me talking to you through my avatar in this virtual room with people from over 10 different countries, but all together in one virtual room. Last year, I partnered with an artist where she created this original piece of colored abstract art called Energize. So we were bringing the literary world together with the art world. And later this year, I'm hoping to come together with a chef I've known for just over a year and a half to create a 6 to 8 course dining menu called Energize. So you going through my book through the medium of food. And so this is a great example of thinking different, because a lot of people, when they launch the book, we do the traditional things. For me, I wanted to get people's attention by doing something so different that you couldn't help but talk about the book.
That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, I'm just annoyed I never thought of it myself, but yeah.
That was the first one that came to my mind. The second one is when it comes to relationship building. So, one of the things I've learned is relationships are so powerful. They can open doors, they can support you in your journey, and they can be the sort of conversations that can help challenge you to live to a higher standard. And so one of the ways I've gone about doing it over the years is if I sign up to go to an event, to hear a particular speaker, then I would tend to arrive early and sit on the front row or as close to the front as I can, because one or two things will happen. One, I will get a chance to meet the speaker, at least have some sort of conversation, because whenever you go to an event and you see someone who's scheduled to speak, before they speak, they're nobody. Once they finish speaking, they're somebody. And so if you can speak to them before they start talking, you're able to have a more meaningful conversation. Now, if that doesn't happen, secondly, you're able to connect with people in the front row. And the people in the front row will very likely be part of their team, or they'll be part of the organizing team. And so I found that the relationships I made with people in the front row were far more powerful than the relationships I made in the middle or back of the room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that sometimes it's very expensive to get a front row seat.
Well, it depends what sort of events you're going for. If you're going for an event where the ticket prices are the same, or it's a free intimate event, then by all means go straight to the front. Take advantage of the fact that you can get there early, and you can build relationships with the speaker and the team involved.
I agree with everything you're saying, because it's just it comes naturally, I guess, to people that are enjoying the type of lives we're enjoying, which is about sharing knowledge, gaining knowledge, meeting people, and relationships. Listen, life is built on relationships. It's a bit of a cliche in the world where people don't buy your products. You know, they buy from people, and I think sometimes we as a population we underestimate the power of relationship and the importance of relationship and the importance of curiosity about people. And sometimes you might meet somebody that, I don't know, has organised the cleaning out of beehives. You think, well, I don't care about beehives. I don't understand them. I have no interest in them. So therefore that will influence your need or desire to talk to that person. But yet when you go and talk to that person, you'll be amazed at what comes out of that conversation, which is interesting. But you've got to not judge, I guess, is the word. It's about non-judgmental.
Absolutely. I mean, some of my best relationships have come from people who didn't obviously on paper have a reason for connecting with me. You know, you mentioned the beehive example. I went to an event a few years back where it was Marie Forleo's book launch. You know, Marie Forleo is huge in America. She's got a substantial following on social media. And I didn't get a chance to meet with Marie because, as you can imagine, the whole room wanted to meet with Marie. But instead, I connected quite randomly with her hairdresser, who I didn't know at the time was her hairdresser. It was only at the end of the conversation I knew he was her hairdresser. But we connected and we stayed in touch. And I said, how long are you in London for? I'll send you some names of restaurants and bars you should check out. And we kept in touch since then. And when it came to collecting the endorsements for my book, I just sent him a message and said, hey, would you be open to checking base with Marie and seeing if she would be okay to give me an endorsement? And he championed me. He fought for my cause. And he said, Marie will be sending you an endorsement tomorrow morning.
Wow.
And that was through a hairdresser. Yeah, not the most obvious person you would imagine that would help you out.
It is about that curiosity, and back another example of doing the opposite. I guess you're not going for the actual person; you're going for the people attached to her.
Absolutely, and you mentioned just now, Jeff, about business being about people. For me, the reason it is about people is that people do not buy your products or services as much as they buy your energy. And that's ultimately why people buy people, because people are really buying your energy. When they come and see you speak, when they hear people talking about your work, when they watch you on social media or your content, and they go, hey, I want to buy from you, or I want to do a collaboration with you, they're doing so because they like your energy. They like what you stand for and what you're about. Yeah.
And I think it's the famous Simon Alexander saying as well, and that is that people do not buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Absolutely.
And it's about and we're back to purpose again. We all circle back to purpose at some point, but it is about people are looking at your passion, your drive, your energy. Passion, energy, you could argue is the same thing, but it's the way in which you transmit the power of your beliefs. And if you believe it, then why wouldn't I believe it? So it's all fantastic, interesting stuff. I've got another quick question for you. So bearing in mind when you gave us your 2-minute overview of your journey, your life, and the fact that your family hadn't run a business. And so how do they feel about what you do and how you do it and why you do it?
The beginning of sharing it with them, Jeff, was really tough because I knew that if I were to tell them I'd quit a well-paid job that had great benefits, a pension, and all that comes with having a stable job, the first question I would have got is why? Why are you doing it? I mean, we've just helped you go to college and you started this career, you're doing okay, and you want to pack it in for something that is full of uncertainty, which you have no idea you're going to get paid month to month because you can't predict that far and you're just starting out. I mean, how is this going to work out? Because I knew this ahead of time. I grew up with my family, and I knew them very well in terms of how they would respond. What I did is I just told them that I was still in a full-time job for a while to buy myself time. I would say I'm still trying to get that promotion. The economy is a little tough at the moment, but fingers crossed I can get that promotion. But I'm still working hard. And hopefully when the review comes around, I can get the opportunity to move to the next level. So it wasn't until I got some degree of success that I started sharing a lot more. It's almost like this chicken and egg, Jeff. The parents don't want you to jump into something unknown unless they know it's successful. But the irony is you don't know if it's going to be successful until you start. And so it was really balancing these emotions, if you will, of this external party wants me to do well, but they want me to do well in something that's safe. But that isn't what is going to fulfill me. And once I started sharing those successes, it took a while for them to buy into my journey. But the moment they started sharing my posts on their social media, I knew they were starting to come around. I said to myself, if they're sharing my posts on social media, they must be supportive of the journey. And so that was such a blessing to see that happen. And then when the book launch happened, to have my father and his partner and my family on the front row celebrating that experience with me was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I was really curious about that because, again, we're all familiar with the parents. Certainly from my perspective, a baby boomer world and baby boomer parents, that it is about certainty, working for a bank. What do you mean you want to? What do you mean you want to start a band? You're never going to make a career out of that, and all the judgments of safety. But of course, it's back to comfort zone stuff. If we did everything we felt comfortable in, then what's the point in living? And I think it's about pushing those boundaries. But listen, Simon, it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to do something we do on every episode as we come to an end and wrap it up. If there was only one message you could deliver to the audience, what one message would you give to the audience based upon your knowledge and wisdom?
One message to give the audience. I would boil it down to a statement which ends in a question. And that statement would be this: you have two lives, and that second life begins the moment you fully appreciate and understand you have only one. So the question to leave you with is, when will you begin that second life of yours? To lead one that is fulfilling and that is true to who you want to be, not to live a life for other people.
That's very interesting. I like that. Although people may struggle with believing they've got two lives. But yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right, listen, Simon, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. It's been fantastic. I hope at some point we get to cross paths, hopefully in the Connaught Hotel, which I know very, very well, where you can show me how your Energize cocktail is mixed together. That would be fantastic.
Definitely. I look forward to that, Jeff.
Another inspiring episode. A big thanks to Simon for spending that time with me today, which was absolutely wonderful. And I hope you agree. Again, brought yet another perspective on why and how people engage. I love the concept that we all state and we all know that people buy from people. We've been saying it for decades, and of course that's true. But to move it deeper and suggest that people buy from and connect with your energy is a whole new but yet totally believable concept, and is real when you actually think about it. All the information and details on Simon, his website, his incredible book, and more importantly, the Energizer cocktail will all be in the show notes. So please feel free to scour through those and pick out the bits that interest you. And of course, please visit my podcast website where you'll see a wonderful list of incredible guests that have shared their inspiring stories over the last 4 seasons. So please just head to jeffdewing.co.uk and click on podcast. A big thanks to Gabriella and Nicola at Cloud FM, my PR team at Thinking Hat, and to my production team, Sam Walker and Michael Blades on What Goes On Media. Thanks for listening.